So I could probably write an entire book about this one hire and everything that I've learned and all the mistakes that I've made. I'm not going to do that, not yet at least. And this video will have to do because I want to share all of these experiences while they're still fresh in mind, while I'm still kind of recovering from this. I'm still shell shocked of this entire experience, if you will, and I don't want this to be lost. And so if you've just only studied RSMMA, or if you're kind of in the weeds right now, then you're going to relate to a lot of this. I'm going to backtrack to the very beginnings of RSMMA and all the hires and the contractors that we've worked with leading up to this one key full-time hire. Okay, and so you start your SMMA because you want to kick things back, you want to have fun at the beach, you want to live the whole lifestyle, the life, right? And you want to stick it to the man, you don't want to do the 9 to 5, all that. Good for you. Same here. When you start out, you immediately realize that you're going to have to be wearing all of those hats. The sales, the marketing, the outreach, appointment setting for yourself, appointment setting for your clients if you're fulfilling for them as well. Whether you're delivering automations or any kind of tech build outs, you will have to roll your sleeves and get your hands dirty. And it's only normal, right? Because at the beginning, first of all, you're learning a ton of stuff. And second of all, your time is just not worth that much. Your hourly rate is really not that high, because these are services that are pretty decommoditized. They're pretty standard. You're competing. Chances are the first clients that you're going to serve are going to be underpaid anyway. And so it's going to be challenging to outsource straight away. I don't think things should be outsourced until they're assimilated and understood. And so the principle is elevate, delegate. And so to elevate something, you need to understand it. Granted, there's a point of diminishing returns beyond which you don't want to be hammering and mastering every single skill set. I'll be the first to admit that. Me as a media buyer, I could have probably outsourced media buying years ago. I still do it to some extent. I'll get into that in a second. But the point is that if you don't ever buy back your time, you just continue to be a glorified employee of your own company. And that's really not that different from trading your time for cash, building someone else's business. And so in my SMMA, I started by basically doing everything. Running the ads for us, running the marketing, the sales, the whole lot, the whole 9 yards, you name it. We were also doing the appointment setting for our clients. And so imagine being at family gatherings, imagine being out on holiday as well and calling leads to sell them fat loss, right, in the US. It's pretty hectic. It could be quite hectic at that beginning, and that could be entirely avoided. That can absolutely be outsourced pretty much straight away. It's a very low hourly rate, low revenue generating activity. When you're starting out, if you're going to offer performance to clients, which is what we did, well, you could argue that the appointment itself is the revenue generating activity because you're going to be charging per appointment. But nevertheless, there are appointment setters in other countries that are going to be doing that for $5 an hour happily, gladly. And so it'd be naive not to delegate that role first and foremost. And so that is the first thing that we basically passed down, the appointment setter role. And we had one appointment setter, then we had 2, then we had 3, we ended up with 5, then we scaled back down again. And regardless, appointment setting is one big piece in our agency, lead generation and appointment setting agency, that we outsourced, and for good reason, because at the peak of it, that was taking almost 8 hours a day, and that is ridiculous to be working that many hours in the business. That was only maybe a 2-3 week period. Still, it's 2 weeks too many. And so we delegated that, right? The principle here is to delegate what you're not good at, what is not generating revenue, or what is draining your energy. And that is the other thing here. Appointment setting is draining my energy. I'm good at sales. I'm good at appointment setting. I love to study it. I love to understand it. I love to teach it, to manage it, but to hammer the same thing over and over again, it loses its appeal quite quickly. That doesn't mean that you should be a little bitch and not do it at the beginning, because first of all, it will train you. It will teach you character. It will help you overcome limited beliefs, anxieties, phobias, whatever it is, whatever's holding you back from actually doing it. If you're going to offer appointment setting, and well, if you're working with local businesses, I would say that is still probably the easiest place, the best place to start, because it's a really good offer. Agencies can offer lead gen, but when you step it up to offering booked appointments, that's where you're really cooking, because it basically preempts one of the biggest objections that local businesses have, which is the leads are weak. The leads are weak. So we wanted to run ahead of that, avoid it entirely. And And that's what we did. And so delegate what you are either not good at, or whether it's not generating enough revenue or is draining your energy. Okay. Now, I love sales. I love appointment setting. I love media buying. I still do media buying. People say delegated, but I do it so efficiently that I didn't feel like I had to just yet at this point in time, right? So instead, what I noticed is that the one thing that's really making me hit my pain line, and by the way, the pain line is this place that you look at and you realize that growing the business any further is only going to cause more of that pain for you. And all these concepts, by the way, they're coming from a book that I'm reading right now, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. Really good book. It's really eye-opening. It's making me realize why at some stages in our journey and our growth, I have stagnated deliberately or subconsciously the growth of our agency, and why maybe even at this point, to some extent, that tendency it's rearing its nasty head. And so the pain line is basically where you push and you grind so far, but you no longer can afterwards. You want to bring your business back to a point of to a manageable point, to a level where you can handle it without causing yourself more emotional distress, right? And for me, that point has been basically onboarding a shit ton of clients and building out their campaigns, their infrastructure, the backends, the sequences, the whole lot, off of snapshots, off of templates. Still, nevertheless, we're talking 3, 4, 5 hours for each new client. And that's where I figured would be a good place to hire and to make a full-time hire. Now, this was completely accidental. I was hiring for appointment setters. I had been doing group interviews. They were going well, but one guy stood out because he seemed to understand the dynamics of the operations, what we're running here in this agency. And he wasn't really suitable for the appointment setter role, I figured, because of the personality, because of other things. And so I thought that it would have been a waste to basically let this guy go, since it more or less fell into my lap, right? So intelligent guy, pretty good attitude, very coachable. I figured in terms of attitude, in terms of character, he was ticking all the boxes. So we hired him. We started part-time. We gave him a few tasks. I worked with him very closely to coach him, to onboard him properly, to teach him all of our operations. I even tried to turn him into a hybrid of media buying as well as maybe potentially a bit of CSM, client success manager, right? And I look at it in hindsight. And the one thing that's worth bearing in mind is not to be too much of a perfectionist. To make sure that you're not holding your employees to an unrealistically high standard, right? Because like this guy says, Dan Martell, 80% done by someone else is 100% awesome, and I couldn't agree more. But it's something that I'm still in two minds about, even now in hindsight, because the amount of mistakes, the amount of errors, and not just that, but meetings that were missed and appointments that were basically not honored, it just made me think that I had dragged out that one hire for way too long. Meaning, I am a big believer in second chances, but not in third chances or even fourth or fifth. And that is such a standard rookie mistake. And I made it not once, not twice, probably thrice. I look at it in hindsight and I'm trying to learn from it. I'm trying to reflect on it and understand, why did I do it? And the obvious answer to me is, number one, the sunk cost fallacy, because I had I had poured so much time and effort into coaching this guy, and I didn't want to lose all that. And also because it was a pretty affordable resource. That was another fallacy. I wanted to potentially pinch pennies on that. Highly not recommended. Buy cheap, buy twice. But here's the thing. There are very easy fixes on all of those issues. And the number one fix for me is, whenever I train someone, document the training process itself. Fortunately, I was actually doing that. I was basically recording looms on all of the SOPs that I was trying to hand down to this person. And I was kind of expecting them to build out the actual SOPs. That's actually a pretty good hack. Train your resource to build the SOP so that you don't have to. The problem is that they didn't. And that was a massive shame, obviously, but I still have those recordings, so I can pass them down to the new appointment, the new specialist at any point. So that's good. Not all is lost, and that's what I ultimately realized. The big giveaway here, the big factor is to realize that if you end up fixing more of the work and it ends up taking you more time than it would have taken you to build it from the start, then that is probably a bad hire. That is probably a role that you're gonna need to hire for again. And if that's hard for you to admit, if that's hard for you to embrace, then you want to look at these other things, which are the ease with which you hire, whether you have the right systems in place to hire. I know that hiring systems are not the best that they could be, or they weren't at the time, because things were a bit too manual. The hiring, the interviewing, the pre-screening was a bit too manual. Now I am bolstering the process, and I'm making it so much more seamless, such that the perceived pain of looking for another resource to hire doesn't outweigh the disadvantages of keeping that person, which is what made me keep this resource around for too long. And so that is the biggest lesson for me. And also the fact that at the end of the day, a hire does take time. It does take resources. It's like a calculated guess, if you will. It's a bet. You're betting with your time, with your money, on someone who's not proven yet. So you have to be so careful about who you're hiring. And that's why Alex and Layla are saying all the time, hire fast, hire slow, and fire fast. And that is basically the biggest lesson here, because at the end of the day, and that's what's helping me reconcile this whole thing in hindsight, when I feel like I'm still undecided whether I did the right thing, whether I should have kept them, tried to invest in them a bit more. Look, you can train and you can get anyone to be pretty decent at some point. The question is, at what point? How much work does that require? And aren't you better just hiring the finished product right out the gate? And so the easy rule of thumb for any hires that you're making in your company are that if you don't feel like it's a hell yeah, then it's a hell no. And don't kid yourself about it. Be ruthless with your time, because your time is the most invaluable asset that you possess. It's not even the money that you pay this person. It's the time. It's the time you invest in training them, and that could potentially be squandered. It could be lost. Whereas once you have an A player, then you're off to the races and you're catching up on all the time spent to train them, all the time spent to find them. And that is ultimately the biggest lesson. There are some roles where you just don't compromise. Other roles, like appointment setters, they are a bit easier to hire for. They're easier it's only acceptable that in some of those roles you're going to have churn. But in some of these other more key roles, I'd say the more disproportional the returns that this person is bringing to the business, the more time you should spend in hiring them. And it's a no-brainer. It's just a reminder for you, if you're watching this, if you're in the midst of hiring, that is the attitude to have towards these things. And in terms of order of what you should be hiring first, I'd say if you don't have an executive assistant yet, that is the very first thing you need to hire, because if you don't have one, then you are that person to yourself and you are a very expensive resource. Executive assistant comes first. The other repetitive tasks, appointment setters, goes without saying, techies, funnel builders, copywriters, media buyers. That is a role that we're looking to hire for next as well. Finally, a media buyer, not just with media buying abilities, but rather a very creative person. Why? Because we are managing by outcomes and key results. And our outcome is always going to be not just a certain cost per lead for a client, but also the quality of those leads in terms of booked appointments generated from them, and in terms of upsells that they produce, and basically uplift in revenue for our clients. And so that is more a creative kind of person who knows how to research, who knows how to produce, edit videos, images, whatever it requires, whatever the role requires. Media buying at this point is just button pushing. So whenever we see people want to hire media buyers, that's a bit shocking to me. It's shocking to me that people still think you need a media buyer in 2024, soon 2025. So that is the first role to hire for us. Then the techie with a bit of a full stack skill set. They have to be wearing multiple hats. They have to be able to manage a CRM, to be to slap together a funnel, a very simplistic funnel if it's required, if push comes to shove. And then finally, a CSM and salespeople, and then that is pretty much the skeleton employee staff that's required for an agency to pretty much run by itself. And then that can tick along nicely, I think, at around anywhere between 30 and 50K per month, depending on what niche you're in. And that's really a place where you truly buy back your time and you can live the lifestyle that attracted you to this model, to this business model in the first place. So I hope this gives you a bit of an overview of what lies ahead if you're not already deep in the weeds and you need a bit more technical approach and a bit more technical understanding of these systems. And if you do, then drop us a line. Keep an eye out for the free community when it's ready. And I hope this is useful. Until next time, rooting for your success. Bye.